What you are about to hear is the story of Evelyn and Henry, a love born in the shadows of a grand English garden, hidden from the eyes of society. Amidst family duty and looming scandal, they must decide if their love is worth risking everything. The garden was a quiet oasis within the estate, perfectly manicured with rows of blooming roses, ivy-clad walls, and paths that twisted through the greenery. Henry, a decorated gentleman recently returned from the horrors of war, found himself here often, seeking solace and peace in the midst of nature's beauty. Though he had returned as a hero, society felt foreign to him. He had left a part of himself on the battlefield, and he felt unmoored, grasping for purpose within the grandeur of his family's estate. On a cool spring morning, he wandered further into the gardens, lost in thought. His solitude was interrupted by the sound of soft footsteps approaching along the stone pathway. He turned to see Evelyn, the daughter of a noble family visiting the manor, standing in a shaft of sunlight. She was beautiful, dressed in elegant pastels, her features framed by the flowers in full bloom around her. But her expression held a weariness he recognized, a heaviness that even the finest silks couldn't conceal. Evelyn had come to the manor for respite from the expectations that bore down upon her. Her family had arranged a marriage with a wealthy suitor, a man of great means but little warmth. Evelyn's engagement was meant to secure her family's place within society, yet her heart remained untouched by the man she was meant to marry. Her soul longed for something deeper, but she felt trapped within the gilded cage of her family's ambition. Their eyes met across the garden, and in that instant, something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that transcended words. Henry bowed slightly, his movements gentle yet assured, and Evelyn responded with a curtsy, unable to contain the smile that graced her lips. The two began to talk, their conversation polite but tinged with a warmth that grew with every glance. Henry asked her about her life in the city, and Evelyn spoke candidly of the burdens that came with noble expectations. In return, Henry shared fragments of his own story, hints of the hardships he had faced on the battlefield, details he had never uttered aloud before. There was a familiarity in her presence, a kindred spirit who seemed to understand his unspoken thoughts. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the garden, they strolled through the winding paths, losing track of time. They found themselves at a secluded corner of the garden, hidden by ivy-draped trellises and climbing roses. The air between them grew charged, the silence filled with the quiet intensity of a love that had taken root in a single afternoon. But reality lingered at the edge of their stolen paradise, for Evelyn wore the ring of another man on her hand, a promise to a life that held no place for the love growing between her and Henry. As they finally parted, Henry felt a sense of loss, as though he were leaving behind a piece of himself in that hidden corner of the garden. Evelyn, too, felt her heart ache, her gaze lingering on him as she returned to the world she could no longer ignore. The days passed, but Henry and Evelyn could not forget the quiet connection they had found in the garden. They began to meet in secret, always under the pretense of a casual stroll or chance encounter, yet each meeting became more deliberate, each conversation more revealing. The garden became their sanctuary, its manicured beauty and winding paths offering the perfect cover for their forbidden romance. Their exchanges were full of laughter, shared dreams, and unspoken longing. Evelyn would steal away from her family's endless discussions of wedding preparations, the suffocating talks of jewels, venues, and future alliances. With Henry, she felt alive in a way she hadn't before. They would wander the garden paths together, their shoulders brushing as they exchanged glances that said what words could not. Sometimes they would sit together on a stone bench under the shade of the flowering trees, and Henry would recount tales of distant lands, sharing his memories of places she could only imagine. Evelyn felt her heart drawn to him with an intensity that frightened her. Henry, too, was conflicted. Though he felt his heart healing in her presence, they were bound by a love that could never be fully realized, a connection that defied the societal rules they both knew too well. And yet, the pull between them was undeniable. As spring turned into summer, their feelings grew deeper. They began to steal more than glances, their hands brushing under the cover of the garden's trees, a silent promise lingering between them. But Evelyn's engagement drew closer with each passing day, a shadow looming over their moments of joy. The weight of duty pressed down on them both, a constant reminder that their love could lead to scandal, disgrace, or even ruin. One late afternoon, as golden light filtered through the leaves, Henry took Evelyn's hand, his voice filled with a quiet desperation. "Evelyn, I know what is expected of you, of us both. But I cannot pretend any longer. You have become the one light in my life, the one thing that has brought me back to myself. I cannot let you go." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as she looked into his, the depth of her own feelings finally breaking through the walls she had built. "Henry, my heart belongs to you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But if we're discovered, my family, they will never forgive me." He pulled her close, his embrace offering a comfort neither had known in a long time. For a moment, they were lost in each other, the world, and its demands melting away as they shared a kiss filled with all the love and fear they could not express. Yet, as they parted, the weight of reality settled once more, and they both knew that their time was slipping through their fingers. Their meetings grew more intense, each one tinged with the bittersweet knowledge that they might not have many more. Evelyn's family watched her carefully, their suspicions growing as they noticed her absences, her distracted glances toward the garden. Whispers of her commitment to another began to circulate, and Evelyn knew that the world around her was closing in, leaving her with an impossible choice. As the weeks passed, Evelyn and Henry's love reached a breaking point. The engagement party for Evelyn and her wealthy suitor was fast approaching, and the manor buzzed with preparations. Her family had spared no expense, ensuring every detail was perfect for the union that would secure their place in society. The garden, Evelyn and Henry's secret haven, was being decorated for the grand event, transforming the place of their love into a scene for her future with another man. Evelyn's heart grew heavy, torn between the life that awaited her and the one she had discovered with Henry. The world she was meant to marry into felt cold, stifling, and devoid of the warmth she had come to know in his presence. Her mother would remind her daily of the importance of duty, of family honor, and of the privilege she had been granted, but all Evelyn felt was an impending sense of loss. She wanted nothing more than to run, to leave behind the expectations and the weight of her title, to live a life of freedom with the man she truly loved. The evening before her engagement party, Evelyn slipped away from the bustling manor and found Henry waiting in their corner of the garden. His face was shadowed with sadness, the realization of the impending separation clear in his gaze. He took her hands in his touch warm but unsteady. "Evelyn, tell me there is still hope. Tell me that you'll choose us, that you'll leave with me." Evelyn's heart ached at the plea in his voice. She knew the scandal it would cause, the disgrace her family would suffer, and the sacrifices Henry would make for her. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized that a life without him was one she could not bear. "Henry, I want nothing more than to be with you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I don't know how to abandon the life I've been bound to." In that moment, they heard footsteps approaching, voices from the house drifting into the garden. Evelyn's heart raced as she realized their secret was about to be exposed. She looked at Henry, her eyes wide with fear and desperation, and he took her face in his hands, his voice filled with a calm determination. "Then come with me now, Evelyn. Leave all of this behind." With one last lingering glance, Evelyn made her choice. Taking his hand, she turned her back on the world she had always known. Together, they fled through the garden, slipping into the cover of night, running toward an uncertain future but one filled with the promise of love. Their disappearance sent shockwaves through the manor, and the scandal of Evelyn's elopement would echo in whispers and rumors for years to come. But for Evelyn and Henry, that night was the beginning of a life free from the chains of duty, where love could flourish in the light. The garden they left behind remained untouched, a silent witness to a love that had dared to defy society's constraints, blooming beyond the walls that had tried to contain it.